So we'll do a presentation of the main areas of activity for the year. I'm going to break it down into 3 areas. We're going to talk about our local work both in self-directed support and personalisation, which we all used to call direct payments, in our empowerment training and advocacy and consultancy work. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our regional and national work, and then at the end of this section I'll be talking about the infrastructure, which I've called the oils, and the cog and the oils, and I've got a Model T Ford and a nice Rolls Royce there, and I still don't really know which one we are, but anyhow, it feels a bit like both sometimes. So our local work, the first slide, is very much about self-directed support and personalisation. SCIL has been at the forefront of changes occurring both nationally and locally in self-directed support and personalisation, particularly during this year. Southampton City Council's implementation of individual budgets continues to gather space. It's at a pace, so it's at a very slow gestation, but it is now gathering pace, and we've assisted people to develop holistic support plans. Support workers continue to support the many people who want direct payments, and there's still a major demand within self-directed support for people to have the money themselves and decide what they're going to spend it on. However, Southampton's charging policy and changes to their domiciliary care arrangements left many disabled people both confused and disempowered, and there's been a number of activities and campaigns this year, not just from SCIL, but some of the farcical nature of some of those changes, and we continue to work with Southampton City Council to try and make the best of that. But the charging policy, as many people will know, has always been one of SCIL's major campaigning features, and Southampton continues to show how not to do these things. Hampshire's Personalisation Commission published its report last November. SCIL and Hampshire Centre for Independent Living worked hard to ensure that disabled people co-produced some real change for everybody. And one of the things that we're doing is facilitating what we call a personalisation expert panel, and by experts we mean disabled people who use direct payments and other forms of self-directed support, and we're facilitating that as a way that Hampshire can actually find out what's what disabled people actually want in terms of a choice and control over their lives. Our new continuing care subsidiary is developing a new individual budget style service for recipients of continuing care funding, and that's a pretty new service that we provided. We only employed staff to it last November, and it's in the last few months that that's started to deliver, and Emma's leading on that. Peer support groups have flourished over the past year. Specialised peer support groups such as a disabled parents group and a queer peer support group have flourished, and I think we're very pleased at the number of different groups which are going, and we're very keen to encourage other people to want to set up groups with our support to meet particular interests or particular specialisms or knowledges that they have. However, despite the optimism, we are still cautious about the future, because, putting aside all of the rhetoric about public spending cuts, we've learned to our disappointment over the years that it often feels like one step forward and 2 steps back when we're talking about empowering disabled people. And so whilst there is a degree of optimism about what Hampshire County Council, Southampton City Council and the government are doing, at the moment we are very cautious about that, and I think we learned to become cynical over the years. We do look forward to even more jargon last year. One thing that personalisation, which is jargon itself, is setting up yet more jargon, yet more names for exactly the same thing. There will be more jargon next year, but what we will try to continue to do is to uphold the same principles of choice, control and empowerment, which has been our foundation over the last 25 years. As Steve said earlier, Janet Marshall left the organisation in the summer, retired to the south of France, and we're all pretty envious about that. She is sorely missed, and she is visiting us periodically, so it's not the last we'll ever see of. I believe it's a real hole left in the organisation. In terms of empowerment, and by that we mean outreach, personal development and participation. We continue to extend the work that we do in that area. Particularly this year, in the last year, we've worked more with social work education, and since September 2008, we've taken social work students from local universities, placed them within SCIL with work programs to help them to come to understand what it is that disabled people through SCIL are saying that they want their lives to be like, and helping them to understand some of the philosophies around the social model and independent living. And I believe, apart from that being immediately beneficial to SCIL, that will help them in their future careers to actually go out and practice what we've been preaching and help us to change the world for the better. And we've also undertaken delivery of various courses for social work students at Solent University and the University of Southampton. All of this work entails developing the participation of service users, and we've formed a social work reference group, which is, I apologise for the jargon, but that's what they like us to call it. The Friendship Club continues to thrive with about 30 members, and with Chris Ryder administrating. We're very grateful to Chris for the work that she does on that. We certainly couldn't manage without her. The peer advocacy, we have high demand from disabled people for advocacy. The majority of the workload is in Southampton's postcode, but workload for the year topped 100 people, and that's one part-time peer advocate with the support of some student social workers. Our Semble House project, which is about supporting people who go to Semble House to find more independent living solutions to their lives, progressed well, although politically it's been very sensitive, as you might imagine. Any notion of changing a day centre provision normally normally ends into a political debate about whether that's the right or the wrong thing for disabled people. So that has been very sensitive, but the project will continue into the next year. And training consultancy, we've delivered a number of courses this year, but they were fewer in number than the last year. Okay, regional and national work. Regionally and nationally, we are working with the Department of Health, the Office of Disability Issues and others to guide them on the development of the personalisation agenda. We are helping to monitor the impact of the Independent Living Strategy, which was launched about a year ago. We are increasingly being asked to advise and guide on a wide range of organisations on disability equality issues. For instance, the Royal Mail, who are in the news at the moment, we're working with them to a degree to help them to understand disability equality in terms of the services they provide. We are working to develop the numbers of user-led organisations that are out there. We are one of the national demonstration sites this year and part of a national pilot to help figure out how best to develop the ability of disabled people's organisations to provide support, advocacy and brokerage services. One of the key areas for us is about how we can persuade and enable other groups of disabled people, not just in our area but all over the country, to want to do something similar to us. Seriously, the workload is sustainable and that's unsustainable, and we are looking at how we might deal with that, with the reality that we don't have an endless pot of money either, just to resolve it in a traditional way. But we are very busy. We're a kind of victim of our own success, and certainly a victim of our proactive stance on wanting to work with more and more disabled people and to guide more and more organisations. But it does take a toll, particularly on the staff, but also the management committee and the volunteers, and that's something that we ignore to our peril.